He is the reason we talk about the unconscious mind, repression, and the idea that our childhoods secretly steer our adult lives. He built an entirely new field of medicine from almost nothing, and then, in his 80s, had to flee his own city as the Nazis came for what he had built. This is Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud was born in 1856 in Freiburg, Moravia, then part of the Austrian Empire, into a Jewish family of modest means. His father, Jacob, was considerably older than his mother Amalia and had children from a previous marriage, creating a somewhat unusual, blended family structure that Freud would later analyze extensively through the lens of his own theories. The family moved to Vienna when Freud was young, where he would spend the vast majority of the rest of his life. Freud was, by every account, an intensely studious and ambitious child, consistently at the top of his class, and was famously given privileged treatment within his own household. Reportedly the only child in the family permitted his own room and an oil lamp for late-night study, while his siblings had to make do with candles, a small domestic detail that speaks to how early his family recognized and invested in his intellectual promise. Freud initially trained and worked as a neurologist, focusing on the physical nervous system rather than what we would now call psychology. His pivotal professional turn came through his clinical work with patients suffering from what was then called hysteria physical symptoms, with no identifiable physiological cause. Working initially alongside the physician Joseph Breuer, Freud became convinced that these symptoms stemmed not from bodily disease, but from repressed psychological trauma, often rooted in early childhood experience, a foundational insight that would become psychoanalysis. Freud's central methodological innovation was talk therapy itself, the idea that patients, through free association, dream analysis, and sustained verbal exploration with a trained analyst, could surface repressed unconscious material and, in doing so, relieve psychological symptoms. He developed an elaborate theoretical structure to explain the mind's architecture, the id, ego, and superego, the unconscious and preconscious, concepts like repression, projection, and the Oedipus complex building, essentially an entirely new intellectual framework for understanding human motivation, largely from clinical observation of his patients combined with rigorous self-analysis. Freud's own personality was, by most accounts, intensely disciplined, ambitious, and somewhat combative intellectually. He built and maintained his psychoanalytic movement partly through his own force of personality, and was known for decisive, sometimes permanent ruptures with former close collaborators and students who diverged from his core theories, including significant, painful breaks with Alfred Adler and, most famously, Carl Jung. One of the more surprising personal details about Freud, given his later reputation as the arch-analyst of hidden compulsion, is his own well-documented, decades-long cigar habit. He reportedly smoked upwards of 20 cigars a day for much of his adult life, a habit he was unable to give up even after being diagnosed with oral cancer, which required dozens of surgical procedures across the final 2 decades of his life, and eventually caused significant, disfiguring damage to his jaw and palate, requiring a prosthetic device just to speak and eat. Freud also underwent his own extensive process of self-analysis, using his own dreams, memories, and associations as primary research material for his theories, meaning much of the foundational architecture of psychoanalysis was built, in part, from Freud turning his method directly on his own unconscious mind, an unusual, almost self-referential loop for a scientific discipline. Freud harbored persistent anxieties about the scientific legitimacy and lasting acceptance of psychoanalysis. Given the intense skepticism and, at times, open hostility it faced from the mainstream medical establishment throughout his career, He responded to this insecurity not by softening his claims, but by defending them with increasing rigor and institutional organization, founding psychoanalytic societies, journals, and training programs specifically designed to establish and protect the field's legitimacy and continuity beyond his own lifetime. Freud's influence expanded enormously over his career, and psychoanalysis reshaped not just clinical psychiatry, but literature, art criticism, and general culture's vocabulary for discussing the mind. But the price included his advancing oral cancer, requiring more than 30 operations across his later years. Chronic pain he largely endured without heavy sedation so as to preserve his ability to keep working and thinking clearly. And, at the very end of his life, the direct threat of Nazi persecution. After Nazi Germany's annexation of Austria in 1938, Freud, as a prominent Jewish intellectual, was in serious danger, and only narrowly secured exit permits to flee Vienna for London with help from influential supporters, including Princess Marie Bonaparte, who helped pay the substantial exit tax the Nazi regime demanded. He died in London in 1939, not long after arriving, reportedly requesting increased doses of morphine from his physician to end his suffering from the cancer that had plagued his final 2 decades, a death he is understood to have consciously chosen the timing and manner of, in keeping with a life spent insisting on clear-eyed, unflinching examination even of his own end. His legacy remains genuinely contested. Many of his specific clinical theories have been challenged or rejected by later psychological science, but his foundational insight that unconscious forces and early experience shape adult behavior in ways we do not consciously perceive permanently altered how the modern world thinks and talks about the human mind, making him one of the most influential and most argued about intellectual figures of the last century and a half.